Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Chris Nicholson. We're going to talk about Better Call Saul, Waterworks, the second to last episode. Chris, what did you think?
I'm happy with it. I liked it, and I'll tell you that the main thing I needed to see, I needed to see some kind of plot twist, and I wanted to be one that kind of didn't just continue this really dark, fatalistic view of human nature. And they addressed both of those
Mm.
with having Kim confess.
Yes. Well, I mean, their plots were going to come. I mean, there had to be plots, right? There had to be a plot. There had to be, they had the phone call. We knew something would happen, right? He's going to get caught, or he's going to die, or something. Something's going to happen. So that was expected. Yes, the human nature thing is interesting. Um, at the Kim, did her nature change for because of some kind of conscious choice, or was just she just under sort of the spell of Jimmy?
Well, Kim is kind of giving us this interesting case in these shows where somebody could go either one way or the other. Uh, kind of the opposite of the message that it's sending us about Walt and Jimmy. That they have no choice but to inevitably break bad. When it comes to the main characters, the protagonists, these shows are saying some people are just bad people, bad to their core, and that badness will be revealed no matter what they do or how they try to run from it. But with Kim, it's giving us a very different case where it's saying Kim really could go either way. We've said this from the beginning about Kim, that she has these two sides to her, and one side is very good, unusually good, and the other side is unusually bad. And whichever path she chooses, her good side or her bad side, she does it excellently. And
Mhm.
sometimes she mixes them seamlessly together. If she's trying to do something bad, she'll know what her good side will do, and she'll take advantage of that. For some great acting.
Yeah. Will we see Kim in the last episode? I think it might be just an Jim. I think we might just get Jimmy on the run for an hour. That's what I suspect might happen.
Hmm. I don't know. Would kind of be a waste. It would be a waste
Maybe,
not to.
maybe this is her end. Maybe she's just she works in Florida. Maybe maybe she doesn't have anything else to do.
Well, it's possible. I think that we're probably going to see her again in the last episode.
Yeah.
There's plenty more they could do with her.
Yeah, that's right. She's a new she's in Florida, and Jesse's in Alaska, and those are they're the poles of North America. The two happy endings. It's like they got far away from possible. So yes, we're gonna get. I mean, presumably Kim is gonna have something like a happy ending, right? I don't know if happy is the right word, but some kind of redemption.
Yeah,
Some kind of not dead and not in jail or anything like that. I mean, happy as far as the show goes. Or she could go to jail. She could be prosecuted. It was weird when she said, I don't know if they have no physical. They have a very credible confession, it looks like. I don't know if they
yeah,
need physical evidence to convict her. I thought that was a little weird.
yeah. That is a good question. I really don't know how the details work out. You would think that her confession is evidence that's
Well,
good enough.
yeah. Well, what crimes have they committed? Okay, like planting coke on uh, on Howard. Uh,
Well, it wasn't actually Coke.
okay, so yeah, so that's not a crime. Like making him look bad, spreading lies about him is not a crime. So disposing of the body, you're an accessory after the fact.
Yeah,
That's the clear. I think that's clearly a crime if she admitted that.
and I mean, probably some kind of conspiracy.
But to do what? You have to conspiracy has to
Well,
have
I
an
mean,
underlying.
okay, so certainly Jimmy would be caught in like a RICO case about the drugs, right? I guess the
Well,
question.
he okay. So he brought he brought like went to Mexico, went to the border, but Kim didn't do that. Kim,
Well,
uh,
Kim knew. Kim knew about what he was doing when he was going to get drugs for Lalo. She knew about all of this. Oh, you know what? Kim could go down for attempted murder pretty easily. She
Yeah,
confessed to that.
right. She tried to kill Gus Fring. I mean, yeah, that's right. She went. I mean, that one is a. It seems hard. I don't know. It was under duress. You could imagine reasons why prosecutorial discretion they might not want to prosecute that. It
Yeah,
was a drug dealer and it was under duress. But the disposing of Howard's body, I think, is the clear one, and
yeah.
where she's clearly involved, and there's no, extenuating, circumstances. She just, didn't want to get caught for her bad behavior. She wasn't physically threatened or anything.
Oh yeah,
I,
and lying to the police about it all.
Mhm. Yes, lying to the FBI is a crime. Lying to local police a crime.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe
that's got to be obstruction of justice.
okay. So they can get her if they want. Okay, I guess all that stuff is flimsy for no physical evidence or no victim alive or anything like that, except the body disposed. But okay, so maybe prosecutorial discretion. Like she's gonna like this is if this is it the county, I mean this could become a news story, you would think, and maybe there'd be documentaries on this. So I'm glad for Howard. I mean, I'm glad his name was cleared up.
Yeah, and of course, there's always the potential civil cases against her, which would be
Yes, that's what she said. Yes, she's gonna sue her to get the water. Howard's widow's gonna own the waterworks. Okay, so I think there's loose ends here. Yeah, you're right. There's still the civil and the criminal potentially fall. I don't know how much they can get to that, but I think they'll give us some answer uh, on this stuff, and like whether this is going to be like a news story or something.
And
Um,
I think maybe the big loose end might be whether Kim would ever testify against Jimmy about any of this. That's kind of the biggest loose end that she could fill.
mm,
Because, I mean, they're no longer married, right? And the whole point, or part of the whole point of them getting married, was so that she couldn't be compelled to testify against him. And
mm.
now she can. And it seems like it seems like they're all in kind of plum position for somebody to want to get Kim to
Well,
testify.
what's interesting is when she did when she gave her confession to Howard's widow, she lied again to protect Jimmy. Did you see that? She said at some point she's like, "Oh, and my ex husband," if he's alive. When she knew he was alive, she just talked to him.
Yeah,
So she still cares about Jimmy, I guess. She wants, she doesn't want to say, but she's not. Her redemption is not total because she's not. She's still covering for a fugitive,
yeah.
right? She's
It's a
still
good
like behaved
it's a
badly.
good kind of character driven loose end here because Kim is doing her best to get redemption now. And the interesting thing is, so far, she's attempting to get redemption only by sacrificing herself and, exposing herself to all this civil liability, this possible criminal liability. But we can see that even though she's trying to redeem herself, Kim's still holding
Yeah.
something back.
What if
And what
that
she's
screws?
holding back
Yeah. What if she
is,
lied? What if she lied on that affidavit about knowing where Jimmy was or something, and then that gets her, and then she goes to jail? That would be interesting. That would be that would
well,
be.
I don't think she said anything about where Jimmy is now. But if Jimmy is
Well,
caught,
you didn't read the affidavit. She could have said, my husband, she could have said, I do not know where he is now, but this is what we did, blah, blah, blah. Like that's what she told the lady. She said, I don't know, Jimmy, if he's still alive, she says. But lying to Howard's widow is not a crime, but if it somehow it was part of her legal story, that could be a crime.
well, it could be. I just don't see in that affidavit why she would need to work in the fact that she doesn't know where he is now. She could easily just imply that, like
Well, okay,
he left.
The FBI could interview her, and she could say the same thing, and then
Well,
that
she'll
she,
face a choice. If the FBI interviews her, she will face a choice because they will ask if she has any idea where he is.
yeah.
Well, actually, by that time, probably they'll have caught him. But the
Caught
point
him?
is,
Maybe not. Maybe they're probably
probably.
gonna go there. Yeah, I mean
But
they
the
could
point is, one way or another, there are multiple paths where Kim could face a decision. Like, do you really want to redeem yourself? If you do, you have to decide whether you're going to sacrifice Jimmy. You can't just put it all on yourself because a lot of it goes on Jimmy.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. I like the yeah. So this is the her final dilemma. It's good. I was interested. Jimmy was going. Jimmy went in the opposite direction. We never saw. One thing I remember one of the early seasons when uh, when uh, uh, when Chuck was framing Jimmy for that, not framing Jimmy, but trying to catch him and get him on that tape recorder. And then they asked him at one point, "Oh, did he physically assault you when he like broke the tape recorder and he broke it?" He's like, "Oh, no, no, Jimmy has limits." And so Jimmy like would never engage in physical violence against anyone. And here we see two instances where it looks like he's about to do it. He's gonna hit that poor guy with cancer over the head with his dog's
His dog's
with his dog's
ashes.
I thought he was, and he was gonna do it if I guess the guy fell asleep, and then I thought he was gonna strangle. I thought he was gonna strangle what's that woman's name, Miriam. I thought he was gonna strangle her at the end. He was at least threatening it.
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
personally, I thought that in his mind, Jimmy was just trying to scare her.
it's possible. I mean, it's possible. He gives her back. He could have. He had the chance. Didn't he have the chance to? He gives it back to her. He has the life, doesn't he have the life alert thing or whatever?
Yep.
He has it for the moment, and he gives it back to her. So either he's like made a decision not to, or he thinks he's intimidated her, and he thinks he's won. I don't know.
No,
Um,
no, that was. I interpret that as like that was a small moment of Jimmy breaking through, the old Jimmy, the one with the little kindness. And the key moment is when she's looking him in the eye and she says, "I trusted you," and he has an emotional reaction to hearing that, and that's what convinces
yeah.
him to
He has a soft.
give
He
it back.
always has always soft spot with the elderly, with this
Yeah,
guy.
so it's his soft spot that really is his undoing right there at the end of that scene.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think if it gone differently, he could have strangled her. I mean, he could have. I think it could have gone another
Yeah,
way. If
I think that's a
yeah, text
possibility.
or something. If she was going to call them, I don't know. Like calling 911, I think would have been scarier than I think. He grabs the phone. This is like a level of physical coercion that Jimmy we did not see from Jimmy before
Yep.
ever. It's always words with him, always using words or convincing people or manipulating them. This was just he was going to use brute force for once. And yeah, like the violence thing happened. The close to happening twice in that episode. You see he's just a bad guy now. He's just like he wants to screw over the cancer guy. Um, you know, is the point about him being self-destructive, wanting to get caught. He like remember he like goes back, he's like about to leave, and then he like goes upstairs and has a drink and like takes out a cigar and
Yeah.
steals the guy's
Yeah. Yeah, it was
watches.
like he was practically about to smoke the cigar there.
Yeah, that's what I thought was happening. Yeah, that was really yeah. I think we were getting really the self-destructive. Uh, we're getting the self-destructive sort of. We're getting that story there. Uh, yeah. So
Yeah.
the
And it's always when there's some kind of rejection from Kim. You know, uh,
ah,
when Kim leaves him the first time, he becomes Saul,
right.
and then when Kim kind of stays gone in that phone call, he just becomes even worse.
Here comes Victor.
Yeah,
Uh,
I guess that's what we could call him.
so he's been Victor. He calls her. He still uses the name Victor St. Clair when he calls. He really loves this identity Victor. It's like it's obviously would be more uh maybe it makes sense in that situation because he wants to get through to Kim. Um, or he could have pretended to be a supplier or something. But yeah, he likes this Victor as like his alter ego, and he uses it more than would be prudent given that he's ripping people off at different bars every night. Uh, the the password thing. I mean, that's so. This is just a weird scam. I mean, maybe the whole point of the scam is it's like it's absurd. It's like that's part of the self destructiveness. It's like so stupid, right?
It strikes me as just kind of a weird conceit of the show that, oh yes, back during this time period, this particular demographic of like lonely middle-aged white guys, they all keep all their passwords written down right next to in their office.
Yeah. So we were talking about the password thing. This is about like 2000. I don't know. This is what 13 or something. Um, this is before. So now you have the password managers on the electronic devices, right? Um, you I think around that time, I think what most people did, what I did, is I used one password for everything. And later just switched to the gibberish things that got saved in the password manager. But that's like that a possibility was he could have ran into one of those guys who was like that, and he would have he would have been not screwed. I mean, they still could just leave. I guess the point is it's so easy to. I mean, I guess it's like so easy. So one of the things about these scams is that one thing I think the show is doing or saying is that there really is a science to human nature. Like you can actually have a person who is so good at manipulating others that when they find the right target, at least it takes the randomness out of it. Like Jimmy is good. Like he's like you have to think of him as like a savant, like a Mozart or something. You have to think of him as like the person who can find another type of person who's manipulable and who can predict sort of with certainty through a complex chain of events. Like I can, manipulate them in this way, and then this will happen, and then this will happen, and this will happen. Um, and he can just do that, and so it's not that risky for him because he's got the intuition that is so good. I don't know if this is. I don't know if this is like. I don't know if like people this good exist. I don't know. It's like a possible question, but this is like a way that this could be arguably realistic. Um,
I mean,
no,
look, he can't be so good that he can unerringly be like, you know what? I've talked to this guy for a few hours now. I can just tell he's the kind of guy that writes all of his
no,
passwords
think about
down and stores them below his
passwords.
computer.
Okay. Imagine there are some guys who they can't find the passwords and they just leave in those cases. They didn't
And
show
they
us.
just haven't shown us those ones.
They haven't shown us those ones. It doesn't have to be. It's like, okay, the plan is if they have their passwords, like around, get them. If they don't, just walk away. He knows enough to know that they'll get drunk with him, that he can scam them into like beating him and you know, bets. They'll want to drink a lot. They're lonely, and they'll go home and they'll be very drunk. And oh, he gets like he's got barbiturates too. He's not just leaving it to alcohol. He's not leaving it to chance. He's also drugging. He's drugging them. And so all he needs is they being alone, and he needs them to drink a lot with him, or even not even drink a lot because he's going to give them the drugs. Um, yeah, okay, like maybe like it still seems overly complicated and such, but it doesn't seem that absurd, I guess. Like that somebody could be that good of a con man.
Well, it's just a matter of kind of when you think about how realistic the password thing is. I guess it's just a matter of the percentages. Like are we supposed to believe that like nine
Forty,
times out of the 10 that he
yeah.
couldn't find the passwords, and they're just showing us the one time out of 10 when they do find them. Look,
Imagine.
I just think that this is a conceit of the show. This is just something the show is asking us to believe people do on the regular.
Uh huh. Uh huh. I mean, was there an era where all businessmen left? I mean, all like I don't know. We were young at that time. We weren't. We didn't have stock account. I mean, maybe we did. What were we? We were in our mid-20s.
I
Uh,
mean, it's kind of bizarre. I mean, think about how these guys are thinking. They're thinking, all right, I can't just memorize one password and use it for everything. That would be too vulnerable. Instead, I need to have really randomized different passwords for everything. But
hold
how am I going to remember them? I need to write them all down, and I need to tape them beneath my lamp. You know,
on.
like, what's really the bigger risk?
Well, because you think of a break-in as different from. I mean, you think of a break-in as different from a like a hack, right? So you don't think of as the burglar coming into your house and stealing your password. So you're not
And
scared of that.
look,
And if the
here's
burglar,
another thing. He would also, let's not ignore that he would also be really screwed if he was right and they did write all their passwords down, but they just did a little bit better job hiding them. Like, what if they hid the passwords under the kitchen sink instead
right?
of underneath the office lamp?
Yeah.
What if
I guess
what if they
everything is.
hid them under the carpet somewhere?
That would be pretty inconvenient. You want them to log. You want them by the desk. You want them to log it. You want them to log it. I guess they have to have home offices too. That they have to have,
Like,
something.
all they have to do is do a marginally better job of hiding those
I
passwords.
know, and sometimes they do. They just don't show it. They just don't show us those cases. I guess
Right,
it's
right.
like what
I
again?
like this theory.
What percentage of? I mean, I guess what percentage? What's the success rate here? If you just break into a guy's house who is lonely and has no family and has money, um, and what are the odds that he has his passwords written somewhere that you could find in a reasonable amount of time? I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't seem very high. Seems like 10% or something, or 5% or something. It seems like the miss rate would be the rate. They'd have to go out so many nights to get all. They showed us all these. Uh, uh, yeah, I mean, they showed us what, like 6 cases. So if they have like a 10% hit rate, they had to have like 60. It has the 60 marks that Jimmy found.
Well,
You're
I
right.
think they showed us a bunch of them.
Yeah,
They showed us there was this montage, and they showed
yeah,
us
I
this
remember.
collection.
Yeah. So what was the montage, like 6 or 7? But if there's a miss rate of if there's a high miss rate, then you're gonna have to have
Man,
scan.
that would be a lot of work on his part. At that point, I'm not sure the hourly rate is even that great.
Well, that's the thing about Jimmy scams. They're all like like get hit by a car, so you could scam the driver out of like a few $100. Remember those early seasons, Slipping Jimmy, where they would the guys would the guys would yeah. I mean that was the what was those guys threw themselves, those two ginger brothers that are friends. They threw themselves in front of his car, and then he has them. He says, "Get the big one," and the big one was him. He wants to get it on video. And what are you gonna get, like $1,000 or something? You get hit by a car. Like that's the kind of thing that like is just it's just absurd. It's like Mike too. I remember once Mike was getting his like salary from the vet, and it was like 500 or $1,000 or something. I mean these figures, especially for. I mean, Jimmy's going to the Mexican border to get the drugs, 100,000 out of 7 million. I mean, that seems like a low commission to take all the physical risk and uh, and the legal risk too with something like that. So it's often just about. I think it's the love of the scams. I think that's part of it. I mean, I think we had insight into that. I brought this up before when Huel was like, "Man, you a lawyer? You need to do this stuff." And then Jimmy didn't have it. And that was, I think, one of the. I think it was this season when they were scamming, or this season or last season when they were setting up Howard. Like, I think that was like sort of an insight into like that's how the producers see it. It's the scamming is the point itself. It's
Yeah,
the thrill of the
certainly
chase.
at this point, it's not really about the money, and it's not even that the scamming is the point. I think this at this point, the self destruction is the point.
Yeah, yeah, that's what that would explain why. How much do you think you can get with somebody? So the password, I guess, if the guy has a big stockbroker account, you could maybe siphon every. So maybe it doesn't have to be that. Maybe the payoff makes sense if this guy's like got millions in the stock market and you just get his passwords and all his info. You could somehow get your hands on it. Maybe the payoff here is very good. Where does Jimmy? I mean, where does Jimmy know who to sell the? I mean, he doesn't have these contacts in Omaha. How does he know
He
who to?
just found this guy. He finds shady people, and there is kind of an angle to the scam where even if they didn't manage to get the grand prize and steal the money from the bank accounts, I think that there's also just a regular old identity theft angle where they're selling people's personal
I don't think
information.
that's. I don't think that's valuable. I think
Well,
that's.
I don't think it is that valuable either, but like in the montage they sell the guy, they give the guy this information, then he gives him like a few $1,000.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Probably the drinks is a major operating expense here.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going out night after night. Uh, yeah, he's paying for his own drinks too. He's paying for multiple rounds of two drinks at the bar. Uh, okay, so yeah, it's sort of on the borderline of being absurd, or it's pretty absurd, but it's absurd in a clever way, which is always fun. And I think the absurdity is, I guess that's part of the point of it, but the show takes it beyond the point of believability. But I guess it's okay to be a caricature of yourself, I guess, as a show once in a while. I mean, I'm fine with that. To me, it doesn't have to be 100% believable. It can be absurd in ways that are sort of consistent with the thrust of it. It's like, okay, Jimmy is self-destructive. He does it for the thrill of the chase. It doesn't make sense from a cost-benefit analysis. Like that's true, but it's like it's taking that to an extreme, and it's beyond the point where it's believable. But that's basically fine with me.
No, the show has always verged into satire at points.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Selling phones. I mean, the selling phone is a scam. It's like yeah, it's such a it's interesting. So Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about. Did you know in the opening scene, uh, did you know it was Kim when it was coming up and you see this brunette and she's cutting something? Did you know that was Kim right away?
Yeah, I could just kind of tell from the kind of OCD way she was cutting the thing, and the
Ah,
fact that I was expecting to see Kim anyway.
that's good. Yeah, so I'm like, well, who is this woman? And then when her husband comes in and starts talking to her, then I see, okay, yeah, that's Kim. That's interesting. She is her world is black and white too, which is interesting.
Yeah,
Um, one of the things the show does that's very cool, that both the whole franchise does, is they show sort of like norm. We talked about this before. Make normal lame people like being normal and lame, and this is sort of like a different region of the country that it's sort of skewering. It's like instead of these like Hispanic. Violent subcultures or whatever, or these like criminal like meth heads in the American West, it's like these like middle class Southern people who love their Florida Gators, these housewives who talk about Miracle Whip and ice cream. Remember that scene where it goes on for a very long time where she's like, ice cream. What about vanilla? What about strawberry? It goes on for like a minute or something, and they're talking about vanilla or strawberry ice cream, and then finally Kim is like, "Oh yeah, yeah, both. You can't go wrong with either." Oh yeah, yeah, I know. Like, like this is and like this, yeah, the sports guy, the fat guy with the Cinnabon who's obsessed with his college football. It does these things that are really cool, and I found that very fascinating. I like the sort of the cultural and sort of regional variation of like what kind of subcultures they're looking at.
yeah, and so the ice cream thing. First of all, that's the one part where I was like, okay, no, this is a legitimate question. What flavor of ice cream should I get? And they are both good options. I probably would prefer the strawberry. But the Miracle Whip thing, when he was talking about not being able to find mayonnaise and replacing it with Miracle Whip, I kind of got the impression that this was some, allegory for how Jimmy is the mayonnaise and
Oh,
this dude
oh,
is the Miracle Whip that she's trying to replace him with, but it's not
oh,
very good. And
oh.
then when he was like, "You think we should give it a try?" I think that was referring to like on a meta level, should she give dating that guy a try, replacing Jimmy with him?
Yeah. The oh, and then later when the Miracle Whip things go, they're like, "What are you thinking about, Kim?" And then she says like, "Oh, this Miracle Whip, you guys think it's good or something like that." She mentions it. Do you remember this when they're
Yeah,
sitting around? The yeah the yeah that's very good. I thought this her sort of reinvention of herself, like so like when she's in New Mexico, she needs like constant stimulation, like Jimmy is giving that to her. She even her legal career, she can't do a corporate job. She needs to defend criminal defendants. um Here she's sort of like accepted sort of the most like, and they're going out of their way to show us this is the most boring, it's like the trope of like the card of like everyone signed the card, right? And it's like these people seem happy. Do you remember that one where the episode where Mike goes into the Gus the what's it called, Madrigal Industries or whatever, and like who's this guy? Like, oh, you need to sign the card. You remember when he has to they ask him to sign a birthday card for somebody? And it's sort of very similar to the scene where Kim is, I guess birthday cards are like a sort of symbol for drab office life. I guess everyone is always having a birthday at some point, and
yeah.
you're just all signing a card and writing, oh, best wishes, great, whatever. It's just like this, like sort of, like vanilla strawberry, like these are the lady was so excited about vanilla is usually used as a metaphor for something very boring and lame. And the fact that this woman is sort of very excited about vanilla and like thinks strawberry is sort of edgy is like I think is sort of a metaphor for like this universe and like what this world that she's found herself in.
It is
Um,
very bland, and it is. a nice parallel between this and her leaving corporate law, because basically, to kind of punish herself for what happened with Howard, for what she did, she's kind of embraced an even more bland version of corporate law.
Hmm. I
It's
think
not
selling
the law, but
sprinklers.
it's
I think
bland, useless corporate stuff.
I think selling sprinklers a family business is. Is the guy the owner, or is the guy just a work? Or is she just a worker there, or does her husband own it? Does her
I
husband
don't.
work there?
I don't think we're told that he has any connection to that company,
Oh, okay. So we don't know his. We don't even know his job if he has a
and
job.
I don't think they're married. They didn't look like they were married to me. It looked
Hmm.
like they were dating, and he was kind of visiting. He'd like driven over to her place.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this okay. He had driven over to her place. Okay, I thought they were married. I thought they were married. I mean, they talk about they're in the kitchen talking about I got this and that. So they're a couple and they're going to this other couple's thing. Okay. Well, yeah, this guy with his tiger, he's supposed to be like, yeah, he himself is supposed to be this sort of tacky, uh, and Kim is not happy in this world, and she's rarely happy. She's never happy. She's only happy scamming people with Jimmy. Like her sort of, she's not happy at Mesa Verde. She's not happy at Waterworks or whatever it's called. She's happy, I guess, defending doing the criminal defense stuff. I guess she doesn't seem that happy about it. I mean, she
Well, she
seems
was
like,
fulfilled. She was
yeah,
fulfilled.
fulfillment, but she doesn't smile or laugh much, like while she's doing it. Um, and she doesn't smile here and or laugh much. And but like Jimmy, when she's with Jimmy and she's like, that's joy. That's the only time we see her in her life that she has joy, and it's just it's a tragic situation for her. She can only have joy by getting with this, being with this exciting man who scams people and has all these other flaws.
Yeah, and then kind of like the pinnacle of her self-imposed punishment is when we see that this dude she's with says, "Yep, yep, yep," the whole time he's having sex with her.
Ah,
And remember, when she decides to leave Jimmy, she says that the fundamental problem with her was that she knew that what she was doing was wrong and that it wouldn't end well, but she was having too much fun. And so
mhm.
the way she's decided to punish herself is by stripping all fun out of her life in Florida, making it
Yeah.
as boring as possible.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So that's like for her, that's the ultimate punishment.
Yeah.
It's kind of this Greek punishment you might see in Tartarus, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I guess the entire sort of flow of the show is all, very, the way this is all set up, we're not doing it justice. It's like you spend a lot of time in this Florida universe and you see all of it. You see the mayonnaise conversation, you see the sex, or you hear it at least. You see them going to work, you see the Florida Gators. What do they call that thing where you put on your windshield so the car doesn't get too hot? Whatever the
A
cover, they
sunscreen, something like that, sunshade.
whatever, and then you see the Florida Gator just like sports again, college sports, like these lame Americans who are always citing each other's birthday cards. They love their college football, right? And then you see that, and you see them in the birthday card, and then you have the vanilla, and the planning of logistics of this birthday party, singing happy birthday at the office. It's a but you know what? I think those people are happy. It's not like a thing where it's portraying like this is drudgery, and the average man is like suffering because he can't fully express himself. Like I think some kind of like liberal would say. It's like certain people like Kim and Jimmy hate that world and find it boring and lame and unbearable. But like for these like simple-minded like these simpletons who love their cinnamon and their college football, it just works for them, right?
Right? Yeah, yeah. I think that we are kind of giving the impression that aside from Kim, like the rest of them are pretty content with their lives. That's just the way things should be. And the show seems to be looking down on them a little.
It's looking, yes, this is the conservative like like we talk about the politics of the show. This is a conservative outlook. It's like there's an elite and there's masses, and like they shouldn't think too much, or try to, they have their nice corporate jobs and give them basic material needs. They don't need like fashion, they don't need like postmodern art or like deep reflection or anything. They don't go around thinking the corporate boss is trying to screw them, or that they're victims of systemic oppression, whether racial or economic or any other kind. It's sort of a what kind of philosophy is this? It is a human nature. It's a philosophy that acknowledges human nature, acknowledges differences, very deep differences between people based on sort of intelligence and taste, and uh, sort of tolerance for monotony, right? I don't know. Do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that this is part of the what I sometimes call the show's darker view of human nature. I think that this is another aspect of its darker view of human nature. That some people are irredeemably fundamentally bad, but at least very smart and interesting, like
Oh,
Walt and
yeah.
Jimmy. And some people are just normies. That's basically what the show is almost calling them. It's like, hey, look at these normies. That's all they are. That's all they could have ever been, and that's all they will ever be.
But they're why is that passive? I think it's optimistic because they're happy. Like they are happy with their state of their stature in the world. I mean, I think that's a
They,
I think
they
that's
are
what.
happy, and because they deserve nothing, they deserve nothing deeper and better because they couldn't appreciate anything deeper or
Yeah,
better.
it's good enough for that. It's better than a world where they're going to be
This is
miserable. I
this
mean, what
is
do you,
this is good enough for the likes of them.
yes, why not? Like, do they have to? Do they?
It's actually interesting because Jimmy and Kim, they believe that some people in the world are just marks, and
Yeah.
marks
Yeah,
deserve
but
to be exploited.
some people are genuinely good. Howard is genuinely good. Nacho's dad is good. So there's also that too. Not everyone is either interesting and evil or boring and stupid, right? There are
Right,
people
but a lot of
and
people are just
of course.
nice and kind and boring and stupid.
Yes, of course. I think that's realistic. And that's better than like a world where like everyone is constantly, the idea that everyone is constantly in psychic pain because they're not being stimulated enough and they have to work these boring corporate jobs. And we need a social revolution in order to, give them, 20-hour work weeks where they can go to the opera. Like that's just like, caricaturing sort of the liberal outlook. But that seems to me to be a much more sort of pessimistic view. If it depends on what you're trying to do. You're trying to, uh, from what perspective are you looking at optimism or pessimism? Is it like what's achievable? Like, yes, the liberal view is much more optimistic from that. But like as far as like the state of the world, how much suffering and joy there is in the world, the conservative view is actually more optimistic.
You know, I wonder, the kind of interesting thing about this is that it's not that unusual for us to see like office workers and security guards and all, but the kind of spin that the show is
Yeah,
bringing to it is that it's telling us that they're all very happy with their lot. This is all
yeah,
they aspire to and all they dream of. That's
yeah.
kind
Just
of the interesting spin that it's putting
yeah,
on it,
yeah. Just bring
because
him a sitcom and
in many shows they would show us this office and it would seem like drudgery to some of the other workers too. They wouldn't be diving into it wholeheartedly, uh, and so that's why I think in some ways the showmaker's worldview kind of mirrors Jimmy and Kim's here. Jimmy and Kim think some people are born marks and they deserve to be exploited, and here the showmakers, the writers and producers are saying many people, most people even, are born normies, and they deserve nothing higher than they want and deserve nothing better than this life of drudgery.
but it's not. I mean, it's not drudgery. They have families and they have work and they make their communities better and they're productive. Like it's not. It's only that judgment doesn't have to. That negative judgment of the thing does not have to come with it. It could be like they're productive, they're content, they're happy, they're benefiting society through the corporate work. They're paying taxes and contributing to GDP. Like so what's wrong? What's the problem here?
Well, I think even from the show's point of view, it's a critique, though, right? Like when it says, "Look at what these human beings
It's a
are.
crit-
They
it's a
are people who take genuine interest in debating Miracle Whip versus mayonnaise." These are people that experience the heights of the emotions they're capable of when they consider whether to get vanilla or strawberry ice cream. There's a critique there.
it is a critique. It is the overall picture negative is the question. Um, You're right. It's a complex. No, there is a sense of condensation. Of course, there is. Um, but the idea that they're good and happy is, I think, also an optimistic message, and that most people are trusting and trustworthy. I think that's I think that's fine. You're not getting. I mean, I would say it's more of a critique if you it was paired by the typical, liberal BS, which is that like the criminals are noble and smarter and they're all better. Like no, like Jesse and his ilk and the people, at least Jesse before he develops, and the people around him, they're just trash, and they make very stupid decisions. Remember, buy one get one free, when like and when Jimmy is like, they're gonna, he's like, nobody's gonna. Kim is like, you're providing an incentive to commit crime, and then Jimmy's like, oh, nobody's gonna act based on that. And then you have this like montage. He goes, buy one, get one free. And they're like smashing mailboxes and stuff. So yeah, for people who don't remember, there's things like a promotion, like one felony, defend you for one felony, you get one felony for your half offer or something like that. It inspires this like, crime spree by these two stupid guys. And so like its view of criminals is like, is much worse. And so I take that as, that it's, so I hate that. I would dislike this sort of normies are stupid if that also was paired by criminals are somehow good or smart or noble or see things more clearly than the rest of us. But it doesn't have that either. If everyone is sort of put on an equal footing of like equally being stupid, like there's an IQ bell curve and everyone's just stupid, but like these normies at least are good compared to the criminals. They're at least decent people who contribute to society rather than take away from it. Then it's maybe an optimistic message because of the relative stature of the normies.
Well, it doesn't really seem optimistic to me. Like I kind of wonder, like I wonder what the experience was of viewing this long scene at the beginning of the episode for somebody who works in a job in an office somewhat like that. Like I wonder if it made them take a look at their lives. Like, and some people might think like, no, this is not what it's like. Other people might have been like, oh God,
Mm,
this is what it's
yeah.
like.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I wonder who the audience is for this show. You're right. I think this show actually is not going to reach the people. Is not going to reach those normies. I don't think this show is ideally suited for the kind of people who can be happy
No.
in this.
Now,
By
on the
the
politics of it all, let
way,
me add something before we move on the politics of it. You know, you kind of phrase it as part of a conservative worldview, but I think that some socialists might also say,
mm,
like, some socialists might have appreciated it because they would have viewed it as a critique of capitalism, of the way that capitalism constrains our characters and constrains our intellects and interests.
that would be a decent interpretation if there was any hint in the show that the average normie is capable of broadening his horizons to something, uh, something more noble and deeper. I don't think there's any hint of that, anywhere in
Well,
this show.
I think it's just this kind of a standard picture of how we're like how the corporate world turns us into cattle, and
No,
we're happy
we're
cows
cattle early.
as long as we get enough grass and sunshine.
Yeah, but they're cattle. But they're cattle already because the criminals were like because it's you have to take it with its portrayal of criminals, right? They are also cattle, and they're cattle in a different way. But that's why it's not the socialist or liberal interpretation would be right if these criminals had some kind of redeeming quality. They don't. They do sometimes. I mean, like Jesse but it's the exception. It's not the norm. Usually, they're just faceless idiots who go out and harm society and then get themselves in trouble. It has a much more negative, and like the criminal class is sort of like what liberals want to see, like, oh, somebody is like who's sort of broken these chains or is like not being shaped by maybe I mean if your socialist view is so all encompassing enough that like, oh, we're all under capitalism, so therefore we're all stupid, and like so you have to assume basically that like that they're more like philosophical communists here, who have a very deep critique of capitalism. um, but I think the sort of the normie liberal, which it's hard to believe, but I think like the normie liberal take is that yeah, corporate life sucks, but there's authentic people somewhere out there in the streets, and we don't have that. We do not see that at
Well,
all.
I think there is this kind of angle where when it shows us the criminal world, or at least many parts of the criminal world, People like Nacho or Mike, at least they seem like real people who think interesting thoughts and like live interesting lives.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I guess, yeah. I mean, people like, I mean, Howard and Chuck are interesting in there. I mean, there's these tastes. There's these various tastes of like, what's interesting to Nacho is not interesting to Charles McGill, right? Charles McGill likes this appreciation of human variation. I think is also sort of conservative between like there's different kinds of interesting and there's different kinds of stupid, and it's all there, and it's like human nature is like different, and like the idea that's, oh, it's capitalism shaping these differences. I think that's a difficult interpretation.
Yeah, like look, I don't actually think I guarantee you if we went out and interviewed Vince Gilligan, he's not a socialist.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying that the particular harsh view of the office drones that he's expressing here might be an area of overlap with some socialists.
Yeah, I mean, so what do you think a conservative or libertarian who defends corporations and thinks they have a role to play in society? What do you think their story is not that people are like, you know like deep appreciators of philosophy or art, like in this corporate job. The optimistic conservative or libertarian case, when you accept corporations and you accept capitalism, is like it's good enough for people. They just want to be fed, and the market works, that it contributes to the economy. That's the so how would this be? What would a more conservative view of corporate life look like? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so along those lines, if somebody kind of wanted to defend the corporate system that we're showing here, they might say something like, "Look, these people, their lives are better, and their characters and interests are deeper than this little snippet is showing us. It's just showing us a very narrow glimpse into their lives, uh, and maybe it's kind of suggesting that they're happy with all this stuff, but maybe." The real reasons they're happy are all the parts of their lives that the show isn't showing us.
Like
You know,
family, like children,
their
and
family lives.
yeah,
And maybe that's where the depth of their character reveals itself. Maybe they feel real sadness and real joy at other moments that just don't come up in the office when they're
yeah.
throwing parties.
Yeah. It doesn't show much of it. You're right, but it's yeah, it doesn't show, like we've talked about, like the sort of the absence of children from the Breaking Bad universe. So maybe it's saying that the children, maybe they would just get in the way, and I guess that's why they're not there. But maybe they're in the background, and giving these schlubs something to wear. We got family. The idea that family gives you meaning is clearly like Mike with Kaylee, and people are making Nacho with his dad, and so yeah, I guess that could be a source that we're just not seeing it. So that would be the defenders. That would be like that's enough to hold them throughout the day. Yeah, it would be a more I would it'd be easier
And,
to
and
buy
you
that
know,
if
and
there were more.
one thing about it, like are we supposed to believe like maybe they do have deeper interests and deeper emotions than they show, and they just don't like to talk about those with their office coworkers. Like the show kind of is cut to give us this impression that these are their deepest thoughts and this is really who they are, and they're happy being that way. But maybe they just don't. Maybe they only show the surface of themselves to their
Yeah,
coworkers.
their death seems to, like, okay, somebody like caring about their family and getting joy out of that. I mean, is that an idea that they are somehow deep and interesting? I mean, that's not a very like complex. If you think like people need some kind of deep complexity to be, I guess, fully complete human beings. Just showing somebody loves their family, I don't think is enough, right? So
Well,
just
it's not just about loving their family; it's also about worrying about their
yeah,
family.
yeah, like sacrificing and all of that, and yeah, and so the corporate job is a means to the end, and that gives them their meaning. I guess that could be one way. I mean, it's not explicitly there, but I guess it could be.
It pays the bills, but it's not life itself for them. It's the
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
that enables life.
And I guess the social, I mean, the socialist worldview. I mean, it has no right to expect that, like, the kinds of things that create a functioning wealthy society are the kind of things that make people experience great emotional depth in their day-to-day lives from 9 to 5, 8 hours a day. It's like an unrealistic sort of crazy expectation. So so not so showing like this thing that's like almost like a necessity for people at an individual level and as a society, corporate jobs in some form, to show that they're not that bad. I guess it's another way of saying that that's the sort of that's the conservative message here, right? Um,
Maybe. I mean, so if you wanted to, you might be able to interpret this as it's nuanced, right? On the
yeah,
one hand, there's this angle where it's saying it's not as bad as you might think because they're happy with it. On the other hand, you could take that a level deeper and say like it's bad that they're happy with it because it's shaped their desires, it's shaped their interests until these people aren't really fully complete human beings.
yeah. So like the average,
You
so
know,
I mean,
when the cow is raised, never seeing the sun, it doesn't know what it's missing.
yeah, I just think it's. I guess the more I think about sort of the view of like the average person, like just should just have like some kind of I guess they'd be sitting around like a Paris salon and like talking about like deep philosophical ideas. I just think that that's like, what do people want from people? Like, what do you want from people? Like a person of 100 IQ. Like, what do you want from them? I just want them to be happy. I don't think they're going to be a philosopher or an artist. Like, is that the non-normie? Is that like a far right wing take, or is that like a realistic take?
I don't know. You know, I'm thinking back to the lunch that Kim had, and it's kind of interesting because before she spoke up, the rest of them were actually having a conversation that I thought was kind of a bit more interesting than the others we'd seen in that life.
Yeah.
They were talking about different kinds of drugs and the hot drugs these days and all that. And then they bring it to Kim, and Kim is like, "Oh, let me just throw you guys some fluff about Miracle Whip and mayonnaise." That's the kind of conversation you appreciate, right?
Uh,
So it's
yeah.
kind of like they were having a more interesting conversation, and Kim, through looking down on them, threw them like this boring stuff about
Well, they were
Mayo and Miracle.
in a way that I don't think Kim would have found interesting. They were talking about it a very dumb way. Like how like it's like a mockery of sort of 1980s like war on drugs sort of housewives. Oh, did you hear about this new thing, ecstasy? I heard that they take pacifiers. Isn't it strange? And like I think it was like Kim would not have enjoyed that conversation. Like the mayonnaise is at least like is not as stupid as that, right? Like mayonnaise she could
Really?
talk.
Well, I guess it's a matter of taste then. Like I was kind of interested. They were like, "Yeah, these guys. What happens? How do you get a? Do you get like an adult man just walking in buying a pacifier? I mean,
Well, yes.
I'd
Why
imagine
wouldn't
that that happens. But
I would
anyway,
have
I found that a kind of interesting
you would
conversation.
have I would have changed the subject from there, like Kim did, and I think you would have continued talking to them about drugs. I would have thought like this is going to be too stupid. They're going to think they know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about, and it's going to be embarrassing. And let me just go back to ice cream or something that we all can understand.
But there was this attitude I thought she had where she was like, "Oh, let me tell you about Miracle Whip and Mayo and my great dilemma. You'll like that, won't you? You like this slop."
I don't know. Well, not that you like the slop. She's doing it for them, for what they will like. I mean, I don't think she's that. I think she's doing it for herself. I think she wants to get away from. I think it's too inane for her. I think it's too inane, and she just is not. She's checked out, and then the mayonnaise thing is just sort of right in front of her, and maybe it's taking it back to the metaphor. I don't think Kim is trying to thinking they're getting over their head and like or thinking they're going to get confused and like trying to bring them back down to mayonnaise. Like I don't think that that's what was happening.
So on the whole, just big picture when it comes to corporate life, do you think this is a depressing or optimistic view?
I think
The
it's optimistic.
portrayal.
Well, I go back to what we said. If you are taking it from the perspective of what is the maximum achievable with human nature, what is your utopia that's achievable? I think that it's a pessimistic view. Um, I think if your view is how much happiness or suffering there is in our system and in the world, I think it's more optimistic than your typical portrayal. So it depends on what you want. I don't have this feeling in me that wants everyone to be a philosopher. I just think it's unrealistic, or everyone to be a philosopher or appreciation of deep art. I mean, I'm happy with normies being normies. And I think there are worse things to be
Okay,
in the world.
that's the thing that I think that you kind of share the show's worldview that there are just a lot of normies and
Yeah.
normies is what they are and all they could ever be.
Yeah.
And so
No,
that's where you and I might disagree.
oh, you think there are no? What do you think? There are no normies?
I mean, I guess it's not a category I really think about much.
Uh-huh.
I guess most things in human nature exist on a spectrum. So I don't really think about normies. I suppose if you identify a bell curve for something, you'll be able to find
Yeah.
the people in the middle of the bell curve. You could call them normies, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to looking at it because I think what we're used to, I think when me and you are, we're highly educated, we deal with smart people. We deal with unusually smart people. We deal with smart, interesting people that are a small slice of humanity. You agree with that, right? The people that you talk to and deal with. I think you're very interesting and very smart.
Oh, thank you.
And
You too.
thank you. I think most people I deal with on a daily
Aren't we truly the elite?
so
It's
right.
people
So
like you and I, Richard,
people like
who are
you
the
and me
real human beings
appreciate better
who deserve the best of
yeah,
life and can appreciate the best of life.
yeah,
These others, the people
yeah,
at the middle of the bell curve,
yeah.
what need do they have of freedom?
Well,
How
we are.
could they use it?
I think that's yeah. I think that's right. I think that's right. And so when we need to conceptualize like if you are like it depends on what
You know
category
what they need? They need to be ruled.
they need to know. They need markets. They need to go to their job and produce something and be happy and live their lives as they see fit. I'm happy with that. But the point is, the way you portray other people is depends on sort of where how you classify the rest of the world. Is so if you're three standard deviations here on one thing, you're going to see like when you're trying to understand humanity, they're going to be normies to you, whether it's intelligence, whether it's nonconformity. So that's like the people being anyone who's a critic is probably at least thinks of themselves as like unusually smart and talented, whether they are or not. The most of the people we see in fiction that are being represented, and Breaking Bad universe does a lot of representing the normies, which makes it sort of unique. But what it mostly focuses on, what most art mostly focuses on, is the outlier characters, the Walter Whites and the Saul Goodmans and such. And so it's so the categories it makes sense because it's like we're trying to conceptualize what is the norm of humanity, and we are outside the norm, and we're used to dealing with people outside the norm, and we're used to dealing with fiction, understanding fiction that's dealing with unusual characters.
Yeah, you agree with the show. You just agree with the show more than I do about like I think this is part of its fatalistic view of human
Mhm.
nature. This is uh, we've been seeing. It's been showing us for the most part the fates of the smart bad people, and now it's applying its fatalism toward the normies. And you know,
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know. Like I don't really believe it.
what's your utopia if the normies became if they woke up one day? What would they be like? What would their interactions be? What kind of ice cream would they eat?
So, like I said, I think it's a legitimate question that smart and good, full human beings could have. Whether you should have this vanilla or the strawberry.
Yeah.
I excuse them on that conversation. But no, seriously, I think
Let's
people
see
are
here.
capable of
Go ahead. Hmm?
more. I think people are capable of a bit more. That's just the impression I get from going out and talking to a lot of people. I
Well,
think
what?
that
What would they do?
I,
What would their lives look like for it to be more?
I don't have a category I call normie in my head. Uh,
Okay.
but
The 50
like if you
percent
just go out and talk to most people, I feel like they're more interesting than this episode seems to be saying.
sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. Yeah, I don't know if that's categorically.
And
Uh,
a lot of like real people, I don't think they would have much interest in the Miracle Whip versus Mayo debate.
I think they would. I think that there's people who have hobbies that are very yeah, mayonnaise versus mirror. Maybe that's an extreme. Maybe getting excited about vanilla. Maybe that's a bit of a caricature. But people do talk about food and what they got from the grocery store and football. I mean, football I think is a big one
Look,
here.
they make small talk, okay? Everybody makes small talk in the office, but I think this episode is trying to suggest to us that who people are when they make small talk is who they really are for the normies, who aren't the great geniuses like like the true appreciators of the show. Um,
Yeah.
you know what's a mark of having a high IQ? Appreciating this show. That's who's smart. The fans
And
of Better
I
Call
want
Saul.
Vince Gilligan. I hope one of my dreams is Vince Gilligan finds this podcast, falls in love with it, and said, "Finally, these guys get it," and then like comes on the show sometime.
Like, look, I think like you and me and the fans of the show, we're like sniffing our own farts and liking the smell. Like when we're like, oh yes, this is how the normies are. We are better.
I want to understand the normie. I want to understand them. I want a portrayal that is not, what I think is unrealistic or crazy or cynical about how much they're suffering or about the capitalist system. I think the portrayal. I don't think you're
If you
sniffing
want
our
to understand the normies,
sniffling
then you
your
go out and you talk to people who you think are normies.
okay. I want to see our artistic depictions too. So you think we're sniffing our own farts when we show the criminals behaving stupidly and destructively?
No, but I think when it comes to this aspect of showing this is how regular people, this is how people who are dumber and less human and less complete than us, this is how their lives are, and they like it.
But there are dumb people in the world. There are people who are dumb. There are people who are very, conformist in their outlook. I mean, and there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them than most smart people would care to think, and
And
most art.
a lot of them, I mean, look, okay, IQ is a bell curve, and my IQ isn't especially high, by the way. Like
No, you went to Yale.
in these fancy
Where'd you go to law
schools.
school?
Hmm?
Where'd you go to law school?
Oh, I went to Yale, but look, I
Oh, okay.
probably had the lowest IQ of my class at Yale Law
No,
School.
you didn't. You're
No, no,
tell me it's that you're half
this is
Asian.
not a modesty thing. Like my IQ was tested, it wasn't that high. Just as a matter of
Well,
fact, the other people
correlation
in the
to
room
the
would have had
LSAT.
higher IQs.
You had a bad day. You took the LSAT, you took the GRE. These are basically IQ tests.
Uh,
You're a smart guy. I'm sorry.
the
I'm sorry.
point
I'm
is,
sorry to break it to you.
people can be interesting even if their IQ is 100. Their life stories can be interesting. Their
Sure.
thoughts can be interesting too.
Sure. The Salamancas are interesting. Well, maybe only by being criminals. Salamancas are interesting, and some of them have IQs of 100 or lower. I think that might be sort of the yeah. Can they be can they be law abiding and dumb and interesting? Is they I guess a pessimist. I think maybe you're right. You're selling me a little bit on this idea, but like they don't have to be interesting to you. Like, but this whole thing has like they're not interesting. Like, if their world is like football is the most interesting thing in the world, and vanilla ice cream is you're sitting there and you're like they're not interesting to me. They don't have the depth
Well,
that
see,
I would.
here's an example. Here's an example. So you're not a sports fan, right? You would just
I
call it
am
sports
actually a little.
ball.
I'm actually a little bit. So I don't look down on the people who like football. I actually do watch when I used to have time. I watched the NFL.
It's kind of clear that the writers are not sports fans. And somebody pointed this out in a comment, I think, on one of the YouTube clips of
Mhm.
the time when Jimmy is running his Cinnabon scan with the security guards. The guy is
Uh-huh.
like, "This is the worst football conversation that I've ever heard," and it's pretty obvious. And this ties into what we're talking about right now. It's pretty obvious that the writers are not actually football fans. They just have this image in their head of like, oh, here's what it sounds like when normies talk about college football, and it's all pretty banal. And so they just take this caricature of normal people and they put that on the screen. This is what they do. They talk about football and they say Martinez, and then the other guy's like, I know, right?
Okay,
But
I went to a
the
bar and I went.
conversations can be much more interesting about something like football, or usually for me, it's basketball.
Yeah,
I have a lot of interest in these conversations I have with normies about basketball.
yeah. But I think if you went to a sports bar and you just listened to like random conversations, you might be surprised at how many do sound like, oh, that guy sucks. Oh, that was a great kick. I mean, you might be surprised at how simple a lot of the conversation uh,
Well,
is.
in my experience,
You're
when it comes to something like talking about sports, uh, most people, how interesting the conversation with them comes more down to how interested they are in the sport, than how smart they are.
I think it's both. I think it's clear. I think it has to be both. I don't think it's. I don't think you're 80 IQ. You're going to have great insights into sports. I'm sorry. Maybe not
Okay,
even.
so Forrest Gump is probably he is who he is. But even still, I probably enjoy talking to Forrest Gump.
I would too. I mean, I'm not. You would not enjoy talking to those. Actually, you would not enjoy talking to those uh, people at Waterworks. I would enjoy talking to them about ice cream. I wouldn't look down on them.
I would have had a blast having that conversation about drugs with them.
I would think the drugs was above that. I would have gone back. I would have been like him. I would have got to the ice cream, which is something I enjoy. You don't really believe you have a low IQ, though, do you? Or you don't even believe you're not close to. You're not close to average, right?
Well, I think IQ is a limited measure,
Fine.
and I think that it does correlate with some life results, and so it's
Yeah,
not
yes.
a useless
I
measure.
didn't ask you the definition of IQ. I said you don't believe that you are low, or you're at least you know you're high, right? You know you're usually high, whatever this thing is.
I mean, like I've got good degrees, so I guess I must be smart.
But you also meet the sort of colloquial definition of what we mean when we say smart. That
Well,
covers
it's
you.
not really something. It's not really something I think about that much as I get older. Like when I was a teenager, I thought a lot about who was smart and how smart they were, including myself. Uh, but the older I get, the less I care about all that. Really.
I feel like it's what people who have like a lot of money are like. Oh, I think very little about money. Like, yeah, I mean,
Right.
you're not.
This show, the worldview this show is expressing about the normies. You know, in part, I call them the normies because that's what I might have called them in high school. It's kind of a elitist, simplistic view of other people. I think.
Mm, yeah, yeah. This is an interesting conversation. Um, okay, yeah. You want to? I want to move on. You want to move on to something else, or you have anything more to say about the?
Sure. I mean,
I think
there must be some other stuff we haven't talked about that we wanted to
just
talk about.
bulk of the conversation, but it's interesting. I love that this show leads us down these paths. Um, one thing I wanted to bring up last week and I forgot. Remember when we talked about like the optimistic portrayal about the legal profession and law enforcement that we see through the Breaking Bad franchise. The I thought that was very interesting when Victor was talking to that what is he, stockbroker, investor, I don't know, whatever he is, the guy with cancer, and Victor's like, oh man, isn't that stuff all a scam, whatever, and then the guy is like, oh no, Madoffs, they're the exception, even like you have to be very sort of conservative to even think that like finance is actually good. That is like a very, I think, an unusual perspective to get, and I think that's like what I'm getting from that thing is like this is how Jimmy is talking like he thinks a normal person talks, but also sort of the way he sees the world, which is everybody is just screwing everybody. And this guy who is actually in finance is saying my experience is everyone is good, and this guy himself is good, and Jimmy is doing awful things to him. Yeah, I found that interesting, and I thought it was in line with a lot of the other, the legal profession and the other things we talked about.
Yeah. It is kind of like that, and that is the one way in which the show has not been overly pessimistic, in my view. You know, we talked about this at the beginning, how the show takes a very cheery view of most lawyers and the profession itself. It's like this is noble work, and most lawyers are officers of the court and see themselves that way in some sense.
Mm.
And you're right that it does seem to be expressing a similar kind of view of that about financial advisors and bankers from that
Yeah,
guy at least.
yeah. So it's not there's not a lot new here, but it's just a confirmation of it's easy. It's like law enforcement, but it's like there's different levels. So like law enforcement, positive portrayal, you get a lot of that in art. I don't think that's that unusual. Legal profession is like maybe a little bit more rare. Finance, like that is just a really a sort of a nonconformist piece of art to take that perspective. It's not a huge part of the show, but I think that's sort of that's the message from that scene.
Yeah.
The okay. What else happened this week? Did it the Jeff thing that crashed his car? Yeah, you were right. You called it perfectly actually. That the what's that the woman named Miriam was gonna be Jimmy's undoing.
Yeah,
Um,
because he totally underestimated her. He thought she was a normie.
Yes, that she was. She was more interesting. You're right. Yeah, he Googled. Yeah. Well, this is. I mean, this is so. This is her personal life. This is her. Like maybe she was like if you saw Miriam when she whenever she had whatever her career was when she was working, if she had a job, you would have seen her maybe behaving like those normies, or maybe a little bit more. Whatever. Maybe a little bit more interesting. But okay, yeah. When it came down, when the chips were down, she could behave in a sort of honest and noble and cunning fashion,
And
um,
strong.
and
She
strong.
was just
Yes,
stronger than he ever expected.
yes, strength. Yes. So yeah,
It's
but
kind of interesting that that moment we talked about at the end. It's kind of weird that he just gives the life alert back to her, and then she presses it. And it's like he he could have chosen some middle path, right? He could have stopped threatening her without just giving her back the life alert. He could have like taken it away from her or something, and then just left her alone.
mhm. He could
But
have. He would have had to take her phone too. He would have had to take. Well, he had the wire. He had the cord. He could have taken the phone. So he would have had no way for her to call the police, or he could have saved. Could have got him a few minutes head start.
yeah,
Um,
but it's like he just gave up basically.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know. He had to think fast. She would have gone to the neighbor. Like he had to commit if he really wanted to immobilize her. He would have had to commit serious violence. He would have had to tie her up or something. I don't think he wanted to do that. He could have put her behind by a few minutes by
Yeah,
lesser means. Um, but yeah, maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe it was too uncomfortable for him. I mean, this is all in the context of him wanting to get caught, right? So he's conflicted. Obviously, he's like grabbing the phone and stopping her from calling the police. He wants to get caught, but he doesn't want it to be too obvious to himself. Like he wouldn't admit it to himself. So if he sees her grabbing the phone, he will grab the phone too. If he sees her, if he's the
yeah.
option to give her back her thing, which she might use or she might not, maybe he gives it back to her and he feels bad for it.
Well,
So he
he
does.
no, he's torn. I think on his deepest level, all he wants is to self destruct.
Yeah.
And so then, it's kind of like he can't bring himself to he can't bring himself to quickly self destruct, and so he's instead locking himself into a self destructive pattern of behavior that is going to force his hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So I googled, yeah, con man. Albuquerque in your face. Yeah, he seems like he's pretty famous. I mean, to be,
Yeah,
to be,
I thought it was a big mistake. I was kind of raising my own eyebrows in the conversation where he started talking in so much detail about the legal differences and like
yes, yes.
bond law in Albuquerque and Omaha.
Yeah,
Like that
yeah.
was a big red flag.
That was a big red flag. That set her off. That she changed when she heard that at that moment. And this was Jimmy was too slick for that, and old Jimmy was too slick for that. You see him just the way he self destructs is he becomes less careful. He becomes just less good at being Jimmy, being a criminal, right? The same thing with the cancer guy. Same thing when he just had that funny scene where he just leaves. He says, "Okay, we're gonna go talk to them. We're gonna go talk to Jeff now." Um, yeah, this is all part of the self destructiveness. So yeah. Okay. Anything else about this week's show before we talk about what we want to or what we expect next week?
No, I think that we covered the big points. I think.
Okay, so what are you you got some of what you wanted this week. What are you hoping for? What are you hoping for this week? Next
So
week?
I want to see. I do want to see Kim come back. I want to see her story continue. Uh,
Yeah, let's do.
so I guess first I'll try to think of like what will happen. It seems like one thing that will happen is Jimmy will get caught. You know,
Or he
uh,
could. I mean, he could die in a crash. Like he could die somehow or something. He doesn't have to get caught, right?
he'll get caught. Well, but I think most likely he'll be caught. And part of it is just this started out as a show about lawyers, right? I think
Mm,
it would kind of be nice and fitting if it ended in a courtroom. Doesn't
yeah.
wouldn't that seem like kind of artsy and poetic and also justified for it to end in
Yeah.
a courtroom?
Like it. Well, nobody. Well, we've said this before. Nobody in the series has ended up in jail. Everyone is dead, or in Jesse's case, so somewhere you think one person would end up in jail. No one ever has.
So,
It's sort of anticlimactic, but it would be sort of a sad. What was his crime, by the way? He was what did he go on the run for breaking? They called Walter White, and they just knew he was like his. He was sort of his. I'm wondering if he's going to go to jail. Really, how much time is he facing for that? Walter White was a
oh,
huge.
it would probably be a lot of time. I don't know if it would be life.
Yeah.
I guess he'd be involved in the conspiracy that ended up killing federal agents. He could try to
Yeah.
do that.
Oh yeah, he's screwed. Yeah, there's a lot. You connect to Walter White. Yeah. There's that's how did they do you have a recollection here how they connected the dots with Saul Goodman and Breaking Bad?
How who connected Saul to who?
Why is he on the run? Like what was the thing that made them say, okay, Saul Goodman's like we got to go arrest him?
I think it's just I don't know if we're specifically told, but I think it's just kind of known that if they found Walt, then it's not hard to find out that Walt is connected to Saul.
Yeah, but what do they know about what do they know about? I mean, he's just his lawyer. What is he? I don't know. Okay, we assume for our purposes we assume he's got a serious. Oh, by the way, let's talk about Jesse Pinkman. By the way, real quickly. That was interesting. Was this a scene from was this supposed to be like a specific date that was on that we saw in Breaking Bad? Because he says my boy is in there, Emilio or whatever. Who was
Emilio,
that?
yeah, Crazy Eight.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So this was wait. Also, Crazy Eight. This is before. This is before Walter, right?
Hmm.
Yes. They're
Yeah, I'm
signing.
trying to. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, this is before Walt, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess this is the moment when Jesse learns that this guy is a real criminal lawyer. Uh, I guess Jesse probably went there with Crazy Eight,
Well,
right?
he
I
was
mean,
on
that is
site.
Crazy Eight we see walking into the office, right?
Uh,
Or is that
mm,
not? Is that somebody else?
no,
I don't know.
Crazy Eight is it doesn't have tattoo. You talk about the tattooed guy?
Oh, I think I'm thinking of two separate people right now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, is Crazy Eight Emilio? Is that? Do you know that for sure?
You know what? I'll just have to refresh my memory. I've gotten one meth head mixed up with another at some point. But
Let me.
anyway, this is when I guess Jesse first gets the idea that Saul is a criminal lawyer.
Yeah. Or he. Well, he. Yeah. So Crazy Eight is not named Emilio. I mean, he's named as Domingo.
Right.
Um. So Emilio Breaking Bad is. Let's see, who is Emilio? I mean, oh, Emilio is that guy, skinny, the skinny guy. They call him Skinny something, don't they call him?
Hmm. I don't know.
Uh,
Like
they
Skinny Pete?
call do they call him Pete?
Well, I don't know. The skinny somebody. That's Skinny Pete.
Yeah, Skinny Pete is Emilio is Skinny Pete.
Oh, really?
Um,
Okay.
yes,
Oh,
so
so
it's
is that he's the
oh
guy that Jesse is talking about in this episode? Then
yes, but he never got it. Did he? He never got into. Did he? He never had a legal problem in Breaking Bad. It was something before. Must have been before because I don't think Skinny Pete was ever in legal trouble. Um,
it's nothing that we were shown. I
Yeah, yeah.
think.
I think this has to be before because we had that. Remember when Jimmy calls Kim and then he goes, there's 6 year, it's been 6 years, and so Breaking Bad we found out took 2 years. Um,
Wait. So
uh,
Skinny Pete, his name is just Peter. He's got nothing to do with
what am
Emilio.
I? What am I?
Jesse
Okay,
was
I'm
talking
looking.
about somebody named Emilio, right?
Emilio Koyoma is Jesse Pinkman's original partner in the meth business before he began his partnership with Walt. Oh, that was no, you're right. That was Emilio. He's like this Asian looking dude, right?
Yeah. Okay. So it's that guy. Okay. So Jesse was
Yes,
cooking meth
that
with
guy
him
was
at this
walking into the
time.
office. Yeah, yeah, he was walking into the office. I think that was him.
Okay. So
Um,
so so Jesse was probably cooking meth with Emilio at this time.
Yeah, and this was before Walt. So we do know there is a period between the end of Saul and the beginning of Breaking Bad because Breaking Bad lasts 2 years, um, and Jimmy calls Kim and says it's been 6 years. So there had to be four. There had to be a 4 year gap. So in that time, they sign the divorce papers. Jesse gets to know who uh, Saul Goodman is, and has some legal trouble with Emilio. Okay, so it all sort of makes sense. I thought we were blending in between Breaking Bad. I thought they were like simultaneously the end of Breaking Better Call Saul and the end of Breaking Bad, but apparently there's 4 years there of Saul Goodman being Saul. I guess which makes sense. He needed time to build himself up and become like the biggest man in Albuquerque. Like he's like a big
Yeah,
local celebrity, so he needed time to do that. But anyways, Pinkman looks old. I mean, he looks just Jesse Pinkman. It's looks old. Yeah, but that was a good line with Kim. Like, is he any good? He was when I knew him.
yeah,
That was pretty
little
good.
on the nose, but I'll allow it.
Yes, I'll allow it. Yeah, uh, and she was uh yeah, and I don't remember. I mean, I think it's fine. You thought there was going to be a tie-in with the Breaking Bad from the plot. No, we're just getting character stuff. They
Yeah, it's
throw.
all just character development. Hey, don't you like Jesse? We'll show you a scene with Jesse and Kim. You'll love that. Two
Mhm.
characters you like interacting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it could have been. It could have been a plot twist. It could have been like she thought, yo, you're his wife. You were his wife. Like it could have been somehow that could have came up, and he could have figured that out, and that could have changed like the sort of the uh to him she's just some random woman, and so it doesn't have any influence on how we see Breaking Bad. So you're right. I think this is just sort of, which is fine. I mean, they're not wasting tons and tons of time on it, right?
Sure, nostalgia, nice emotion. Sure.
Yeah, why not? And they're giving us something. They're giving us, yeah, the scene was worthwhile. I mean, because you're seeing just like he's shut off, like how broken he is when he saw how shut off he is to the human world. Like even Kim has no, all he can do is he has this facade, this
Right.
caricature, this character, this
It's
caricature.
pretty obvious though, and it kind of makes me wonder. Makes me wonder how exactly he was trying to hurt Kim. On a superficial level, he was just trying to play ordinary tricks to hurt Kim, like, "Oh, I've got more money than you. Doesn't that suck for you?" Or like, "Oh, let me ask you about Florida." Psych, I don't give a shit about Florida. Like juvenile stuff. But
Yeah,
on a deeper level, maybe Jimmy was trying to hurt Kim by showing her what she had done to him, what she'd made him become. Maybe that was the real play to hurt her.
yeah, yeah.
Like, this is what you made me. This is who you made me. This is
Yeah.
who I'm going to be now.
Right. It's like, oh, it's nice, isn't it? It's like, well, yeah, no, it's something. It's like this garish, like this ugly sort of universe he's created, where he's, the sort of the king of, the king of the, this, just a very, very aesthetically unappealing, amoral, like grubby. Yeah, exactly. It's everything. He's showing her the whole, like he had her come down there to. He must have told her to come down there to sign the papers. He didn't make her. Uh, he didn't go somewhere else and meet her. You're right. And so he's telling her, I don't. Yeah, you're right. Like I was more simple minded. I was like, oh, he's just showing her that he doesn't care about her. But no, it's deeper than that. He's showing her that he's become something ugly, uh, thanks to her leaving him.
Yeah, and now that I like voiced the theory, I think that really might be what's going on here, because Jimmy and Kim, they know how each other think, and so I think that maybe on some level this is how he's actually trying to hurt her, and it probably worked.
Yeah, yeah. I think that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, yeah. I wanted to talk about the Pinkman scene. So, okay, so like, so what's gonna happen next week? What do we want to happen? What's gonna
You
happen?
know, I say that we go into a courtroom with Jimmy on trial. Like, I'm not like that sure about it, but I think it's the best guess I have. So I am confident he'll be caught. You know, in his vast arsenal of skills, he hasn't shown us any ability to actually escape from the police and the feds in a situation like this. So I think he'll be caught. I think he'll end up in a courtroom at some point, and I think the show will choose to show us his time in a courtroom, uh, because that would be both fitting and justified, and kind of artistic and thematic. You know,
Yeah,
returning Jimmy and probably Kim to a courtroom,
yeah,
uh, where in some sense he's in his element, and I think there's a decent chance we get some great dramatic speech from Jimmy, where he's firing off about why he did it and all that. Maybe he'll
yeah.
confess.
That's good. That's good. I was thinking maybe, and maybe this wouldn't be that compelling. I thought it might be. So you saw? Did you see the preview where like it's like a wrecked car? I thought it might be some like artistic thing. You remember when him and Mike were in the desert and like they're doing that? I thought it might be some kind of him trying to survive, and that could be like the whole episode. And then he just dies. I mean, he could die at the end, or something could happen. You're right. So like it's there's easy. That's one possibility. I think they don't do that because then it's too predictable. Because then if the whole hour is him trying to survive in the wilderness or something, he's going to die at the end. You don't have time for a trial. I think he has to be caught, um, and then he has to go to trial. I think that's right, and we've never had that. We've never had this in any. Yeah, and Kim could go to jail too, and Kim and they could both be in jail. They could. You remember the parallel lives thing where they show them each of them waking up and brushing their teeth? Like, remember those? They could do that in jail, and he's in the men's prison and she's in the women's
Yeah,
prison.
I think early on you predicted that this might end with Jimmy finally in jail. I
Yeah,
think that that's looking more likely right now.
yeah, I think that's right. Well, there's jail and there's death. I mean,
And then he's going to become like king, king of the courtyard in jail. He's
yeah.
going to become the
Then
kingpin,
and then it goes back to color when
because
when
that's
he's
where he really belongs. That's where Chuck knew he always belonged.
yes, but it goes back to color and he's happy. He's happy in there, like
I'm
letting
kind of believing this as we flesh it out. I'm kind of believing it, and the
yeah.
color part too.
You're gonna bring back the color. That you need that. You need the color. And then Kim, Kim is in jail, but it's black and white. It stays black and white forever.
Maybe I'm not as sure about that part. Who knows? But I like the idea of it doing the return to color once he's back in jail.
Yeah. And eventually, yeah, they're not going to show us him as an old man because they don't have the budget we've realized for changing people's ages. So maybe they've saved it all. Maybe they have one budget of him 80 years old. He gets out of jail finally, and he's on his deathbed, looking back at all the scams.
I think maybe it will be bittersweet because it'll show us him in jail, caught, the end of all his schemes. But then somebody will approach him. There will be some problem. It'll give us an extended jail scene. There'll be some problem. He'll get
Yeah,
an idea on running some scam in jail to solve the problem, and then slowly the color will come back into his life because this
yeah,
is always who he was, and now he's in his element. Now he's
yeah.
where he belongs.
Yeah, he's gonna be I mean, he's gonna be a celebrity now. I mean, the story is gonna get out. This is gonna be like something that'll be made documentary. The Walter White, so all this stuff is public now. Kim has told the whole story. That makes me think that there'll be like movies and TV series is made about this. And Walter White, the story is known. This guy who becomes a big. So Walter White's story is known. The Kim and the Saul story is known. It's all connected. People are going to be able to put it all together, and that seems like that would be a that seems like it would be a that would give him meaning. I mean, it seems like it would give him. He likes this idea of sort of being a celebrity and center of attention. Maybe his sort of his there's part of him that wants to be sort of liked and admired for his cleverness, and now he might get that on a scale beyond any even if he's in jail, anything
Yeah.
he would have imagined before. So maybe
he,
that's
he'll get the he'll get the fame he wants too. He'll get the influence and respect he wants within jail, and he'll get the fame he wants outside of jail.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that is cool. Well, that's interesting. It seems too neat. I don't like that we can predict it. I want there to be a twist. So I like that. I like that we wrote a good ending.
Hmm.
But I hope they throw something else, or maybe not. Maybe that's just so good. You can't beat them back in the courtroom with Kim having to testify.
He'll
Uh,
become Slipping Jimmy again, finally in jail.
oh man. All right. Well, this was fun, Chris, and yeah, I will see you after the finale.
One more episode.